Many investors think the home inspection is a critical part of their deal underwriting and it's what protects them from mistakes, or even they use it as a negotiating tool in order to get money off on a purchase. I've even seen prominent investors say, quote, it's the single most important part of evaluating buying a house. And that's great. I'm sure they were telling the truth, and that is the case for them. But I'll tell you that I haven't gotten a home inspection in over 9 years, and I've bought 70 plus units of real estate in that time. I want to be clear. A home inspection can be great if you're a home buyer buying your primary home, or if you're a person that hasn't purchased a home before, or you're not as familiar with construction, or you're buying a turnkey deal, or it's some sort of situation where you may even be able to get a discount on the price based on the home inspection. But my experience is just my experience, is not advice telling you not to get a home inspection. But my experience has been that home inspections basically end up just being this giant report where the person is telling you to have qualified professionals come in and evaluate all these things that they saw. So it's just this whole list that's saying, hey, ask a plumber, ask an electrician, ask a roofer. And beyond that, a lot of times they end up missing the actual things that make or break a deal. No inspector ever told me that the fire escape on the back of my triplex up in Hagerstown was going to cost $50,000 to fix. It was in poor repair. No home inspector caught the fact that the furnace on my first house hack wouldn't heat sufficiently in the wintertime, leaving me living in a basement without sufficient heat in the wintertime with tenants in the property. And that's not because home inspectors are bad at their job. I want to be clear. It's just that there's a real limit on what you can do when you're doing a non-invasive inspection. There's a limit on what they're able to do just going through the property for a couple hours on one day prior to closing. But in spite of those limitations, people are made extremely confident by having these home inspections. I've had newer investors tell me that they know they're going to have low maintenance costs at the property because they already got their home inspection. In that example, that same investor on that first property that had the home inspection got hit with roof repairs, hot water heater repairs, and a host of other issues, which ostensibly would have been on the home inspection. And the best part of the whole thing is that the home inspector has no liability for any of this. They disclaim any liability for the things that they're telling you in the report, and it's written in there bunches of times that everything they're telling you is for informational purposes only, and it's necessary for you to seek out qualified trade professionals if you need any further information about the situation. So basically, they give you this report, it often misses key items, and it tells you to ask actual professionals, and then they don't have any liability at the end of the situation. So the one place where I do think home inspections can be extremely useful for someone that's becoming a professional investor is at the beginning of your career when you genuinely don't know what can go wrong in a house. In that situation, it can be useful because you can go in and essentially you're paying that $450 or $600 to learn what the inspector would check for and to get their checklist, which you can then now start using in the future when you're evaluating properties on your own to make scope of works during the project. But be careful with these home inspections because in addition to the issues that I've already mentioned, home inspections also create a dynamic where you can get talked out of some of your best deals. A great example of that is a deal that I bought near Johnston Square in Baltimore. The inspector found that in the attic, there was some old fire damaged wood in the trusses of the roof. So the roof was still standing and the wood was still strong, but it was scary. And the inspector was essentially suggesting we needed to have the house evaluated structurally and all these other things because of the fire. But looking back on that and knowing what I know now, basically that was all ridiculous. Two reasons why. The first is that in Baltimore, the properties are built with basically a double thick structure of bricks, creating all of the exterior walls. So even in the case of a fire, it's exceedingly rare that there is structural damage to the whole property because of the fire, just damage to some of the wooden elements, which means that at worst, some of this wood in the structure of the roof may have needed to be replaced, but there was no way that it was very unlikely that the whole house was now going to be threatening to collapse. That's something that would be the case in a frame-built detached house, but not the case in this type of house. But additionally, that deal ended up being one of my best deals. It saved us $18,000 in year one on a house that we bought for $96,000. And ever since we rented it out, when we finally moved out, we grossed $900 a month in cash flow for the past 4 to 5 years. Basically, we would have been made scared by that inspection and missed out on a phenomenal deal. So, what I found to work better for me than using a home inspector is, since you're already committing to becoming an expert in construction and how to manage these real estate deals and rental property management and all of that, is to learn what the inspector is actually checking for and then start assessing those things yourself, and do so with contractors who are on your team. So what I do is I take photos of things at the house when I'm walking the house to try to see what type of repairs we're going to need to do. I take pictures of anything that looks unusual, and then if there's something that I can't figure out on my own, I'll reach out to contractors that I've used before and given business to, or real estate investors that I've met at meetups that are doing similar types of things as me, and ask them to tell me, does this look like a problem? This is what I see that looks like a problem here. I've looked it up online. It looks like it's not a problem for these reasons. Would you leave something like this in your house? I'm not asking them to basically do the whole evaluation for me. I'm reaching out about specific things where I'm not sure what I'm seeing. And over time, I learn those things, and then I'll need less and less help. So I'm just telling you what's worked for me. It may not be the right approach for everyone, but I found that I got better information that's actually more helpful rather than just this giant report that says seek out professionals. Most people that are professional investors buying properties actively, they're buying to renovate. They're either going to renovate to rent or they're going to renovate to sell. So a core part of your value in doing that is being able to assess what's going on wrong at the properties. So if you don't accept that you're going to have to learn how to assess what's wrong at the properties, it's basically like you're not going to be able to be an effective, active real estate investor. So you have to go through this journey anyway. I just think it makes more sense to do that without adding $500 to every underwriting, to have someone come in and tell you to check with qualified professionals. There are some items that you really don't want to get wrong in a house, as far as missing if something's wrong. So to me, these items don't mean that I have to get home inspections, but I basically make specific strategies in order to mitigate the problems that can come if something arises with those issues. So a really good example of those is water lines or sewer lines. Those are two of the larger capital expenditure items that we have in Baltimore, and it's relatively common to have to replace them. What we do, since we're not getting an inspection, is we get supplemental insurance that protects us if something goes wrong to our water or sewer line. And because of that, we've been able to mitigate that cost. So if you have some unique item in your market, which is a typical cost that you do want to make sure you don't miss, it makes a lot of sense to make a plan around that and figure out a way to mitigate it. The second thing to note is that even if you do get a home inspection, you need to plan for meaningful maintenance anyway. You want to use normal assumptions and ratios, because hope is not a strategy. You have to make sure that you're actually ready for things to go wrong in the house, which they will, regardless of whether you got a home inspection. What actually protects you is your underwriting. It's having real margin built into the deal and consistently developing construction expertise over time. That's what actually protects you in deals, not a piece of paper from a home inspector.